Now, whenever we talk about any network, we try to represent that as a function of nodes and edges. And nodes are also called as vertices, and edges are nothing but the connections between them. The objective of trying to analyze the network is to try and define some kind of interesting facts on which node has more importance, which edge has more importance in certain domains like logistics, medications, right, etc. But in order to derive the true analysis and true insights from the network, we need to try and study the properties on these elements. Every network has two elements, right? Nodes and edges. So we will have to define the properties. We'll have to study these individual components or elements and define the properties of them. We will be studying more about this in the upcoming videos, but in order to talk about the properties, if I take an edge, typically when we talk about edges, edges are nothing but the connections between two nodes or two entities. And when we talk about edge, the edge exists only if there are two vertices, right? At least two vertices should be there. So I would say at least two vertices or two nodes should be there. All right. Then a edge can be a directed edge or it could be an undirected edge. That means if I'm connecting node A to node B, for example, Twitter, it contains a directed connections. But if I eliminate that arrow, the direction, then this becomes an undirected connection like Facebook or LinkedIn. The third property is when we talk about these edges, the edge should have some value. The connections between the entities should have some values. Those values can be represented in numeric formats, which are called as weights. So an edge could be an weighted edge or it could be an unweighted edge. For example, assume this is air traffic. The simplest example for network analytics is an air traffic. So let's say this is airport 1 and this is airport 2. If I try to see if there are connections between them, then yes, this basically tells us the route between A and B two airports. Right? This is one terminal, this is one terminal, and I know that there is a connection. That means we have flights which travel from A and B. But if I want to understand the importance of the connections, right? If I talk about directed and undirected graphs, let's say if I have directed graph and undirected graph like this, then we are only looking at whether there is a direct connection between these airports or not. Do we have direct connecting flights between these airports or not? But if I talk about directed graph, we are talking about flights taking off from airport A to B and C. But do we have return flights? We may not have. That is not represented here. Right? So that is about directed and undirected. On top of this, if I try and bring weightages, I want to understand the distance between these two, three airports. Or if I want to understand whether this route is more efficient or this route is more efficient with respect to, let's say, sales or with respect to fuel consumption, etc. Whatever the factor that we want to analyze these connections, right? We can assign these weights to quantify those factors. For example, the fuel efficiency is something that I want to understand between these routes. Then probably A and B is more fuel efficient compared to A and C. So we can represent that fuel efficiency or fuel consumption for that matter between these two routes using weights. So if I say fuel consumption is 5, whereas here fuel consumption is, let's say, 7. So I can look at these weights which are assigned to these edges to quantify that A and B is more fuel efficient. The route between A and B airports is more fuel efficient for the airlines compared to the route between A and C. This information would definitely give a lot of insights and allows the management to take appropriate decisions with respect to um, gaining profits or coming up with some strategies to enhance the profits in their organizations between these routes. So these are the type of edges that we're talking about, and these are some of the properties.